We're here with Rabbi Micha Berger, who is a friend of mine, and the author of Widen Your Tent, Thoughts on Life, Integrity, and Joy, based on Rav Shimon Shkop's Introduction to Shaarei Yosher. So Rabbi Berger, it's a gorgeous book, and I know we've discussed it, and I want to tell you that I actually go back to this, because there's some books that you read once and it's done. This is a real sefer. I mean, this is a real limud. Maybe some of our readers, listeners, viewers don't really know who Rav Shimon Shkop was and what the origin of this. Can you just give a short background as to what this is?
Okay, so who Rav Shimon Shkop was? Rav Shimon Shkop was about 6 years younger than Rav Chaim Brisker. So he gets to Volozhin. Rav Chaim Brisker is an older bacher. He has a chabura, a informal group studying halacha, Talmud, the things he becomes famous for, using this new methodology that Rav Chaim came up with, which we now call the Brisker Derech. Rav Shimon was not 100% satisfied with the Brisker Derech. There's an old line that what's it called? That in Bris they ask Vos, and in Tells they ask Farvos. In Bris they ask what, and in Tells they ask why. Telzer Derech is largely what Rav Shimon does to Brisker Derech when he himself gets hired and goes off to Tells. So he marries into the Tells family, marries Rav Luck's niece, gets a job teaching in Tells, which is where he really becomes famous. He develops this Derech HaLimud, this style of studying Gemara and Halacha that is based very much on the why. So the example that I like to give is that to Rav Chaim, the concept of ownership is a set of halachas. This is the what's called. This is how you acquire something, a kinyan. This is how you inherit something. And if you list all of them together, that is the definition of property. Rav Shimon starts his magnum opus, Shaarei Yosher, Shar 5, Section 5, with the observation that property is a natural part of the human experience. And the role of halacha is to express property in a holy way. So Rav Chaim defines holiness by the halacha. Rav Shimon works with a first principle. The world has this concept called property. How do we do it in a godly way?
Amazing. And that's what Shaarei Yosher is. This is not on all of Shaarei Yosher. This is just on the Hakdama, right? What's the difference?
Right. So what ends up happening is the like a lot of authors, Rav Shimon wants to put his worldview somewhere. Of course, I'm projecting. I wasn't there to speak to him. But Rav Shimon wants to put his worldview somewhere. So before Shaarei Yosher, which is a rather heavy book of complex reasoning, he wants to put down his worldview. So the introduction, of course, the one part of the introduction is your usual, thanks his parents, thanks his son-in-law who proofread, all those things. But the first part, the first 2/3 of the introduction, which this book is actually about, spells out his worldview, from why did God create the universe, to what is holiness, to what our task is in life. How do we live as happy and fulfilled human beings and become the people that Hashem made us to be?
Amazing. And what do you think, if we don't have a lot of time here, but what is the central concept? What does Widen Your Tent mean?
So Widen Your Tent is about the concept, this idea which we all learned, many of us learned in first grade, poster on the wall, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Rabbi Akiva says this is the great principle of the Torah. Well, what would Torah look like if we actually continued with that thought after first grade? What is the role of esrog or tefillin if the great principle of the Torah really is to love your neighbor as yourself? So Shimon develops this idea of a Judaism that really puts the interpersonal first. And I try to show in the book that this is actually not specific to Rav Shimon, although Rav Shimon did feel a connection to the Musar movement, which places a lot of emphasis on the interpersonal. But Rav Chaim too, who we hold up as the paragon of the yeshiva movement, saw his job as more being a social speaker for the downtrodden. What does a rabbi do? He says he protects the weak, he provides chesed for those who don't have, and I forgot the third one, frankly. But the idea is that he saw life was seen in Lithuania as very interpersonal. The Torah was mostly about being a mensch. And all the other mitzvos were because that's what it takes to become a better mensch.
Amazing. Rabbi Berger,
Rav Shimon takes an...
Go finish off, yeah.
Okay. Rav Shimon takes an interesting approach in that he builds this menschlichkeit, he builds this being a good person, not on stepping aside for the other person, but I'm building on who I am. So the way I can provide for my children, because I see myself in my children, if I could see myself in my community, so it's my community, it's much easier to give. And this is a much easier approach for many of us today to become more giving people.
Beautiful.
And if we're being asked to abnegate and say, it's all about you.
In other words, don't
so
give to
I think it's
else.
A message we really need to hear.
Right. So don't give to somebody else in their tent, rather widen my tent, but it's including others around.
Right. So the title idea behind Widen Your Tent is this idea. So instead of me looking at me as just like the person in this body, I look at me as including my wife. Right? Because again, I see, us as a meanness. Right? I see my kids, the example I gave before. The broader I can make this ani, the more people I could pull into the tent, the more I could give and emulate God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, emulate the Creator who is giving to us continuously. I could join with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and become a partner in creation by widening my tent, as the title goes.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's always a pleasure. You've given me extra motivation to once again look at the Sefer, which I do anyways. But it's a beautiful, beautiful Sefer and a beautiful concept. Thank you for sharing a few minutes with us. And God willing, we'll be able to do this again at some point. All the best. Thank you.
Well, okay. Thanks to you and everybody at Mosaic who made the book possible.